is violence in movies and sex on TV. But where are those good old-fashioned values on which we used to rely? Oh, lucky there's a family guy. Lucky there's a man who positively...
Well, Charles, I got a little jammed up there, unfortunately. Give me 1 second here and we'll... It's so funny. You take careful care to make everything come off properly, and now we've got a black screen. Very good, very good. Okay, here we go. And there we are. Well, hello, Charles.
Hey, Jason, it's great to see you.
There's always something happening.
If it's not something, it's another thing.
If it's not something, it's something else. But I think people get the idea. Today, we're talking about the family fraud guy. And I think you know who that guy is.
It's pretty. I mean, the picture of him is just priceless. It really is.
Well, you know, a picture says 1,000 words, Charles.
I mean, I really think we ought to. When I say we, I mean you. In this case, but we ought to envisage the idea of reaching out to the crowd and asking for comments about, you know, which is their most popular. If you can only pick 10, let's say the 10 best out of. Or 5 even, you know, the 5 best out of the 133 of these that you've done.
Yeah, well, we've done.
Well, I didn't do much of the illustration.
Oh, the art,
yeah.
Right.
And actually, you didn't either, it was the art department.
Right. You honestly have fooled some people with that. They think there is some vast art department
stop.
in the bedroom or something over there.
Well, I thought it was in a foreign country. Exactly.
Outsource this stuff to India or something like that.
I actually was involved with a project where they're trying to convince me that you outsource to illustrations to the Philippines.
That happens all the time.
But seriously, this is a well, first of all, the real show Family Guy is one of my all-time favorites, and it's tough for me to decide whether it's Stewie or the dog that I like the most out of the various characters. But the repartee in that real cartoon is really
it's great.
So far away from being something that children should watch.
Absolutely. I think the most successful aspect of this particular illustration is the Bill Clinton, Peter Griffith conglomerate.
Yeah, it really is good. It really is good. From his chin to, you know, his hair. And just, that look is a look we've seen before. It's his regular, you know, face-on look.
Exactly. Sort of
you
the
mean
default,
me?
Stupid grin sort of look. So, Charles, I think we've got a lot to cover today.
Sure.
Was there anything we wanted to rap about, or do we just want to hit the slides right away?
I think we should just get right into it.
Okay, no problem. We can do that. Got the slides right here.
Great.
Oops, that's a little big. Let's get that properly arranged. So, there we are. Okay.
Great.
Yes.
So what we have here, when we think about the Clintons and the people around the Clintons, and we have been picking on the Clintons because, you know, we like to focus on complex multinational frauds, and they've been operating, in my judgment, the largest set of unprosecuted frauds in history. And then every time I talk to a new person or an old person researching this, we find more and more confirmation looking at the evidence out there that that's exactly the case. That this, you can't just look at the Clinton Foundation. You got to go all the way back to the beginning and ask yourself, is the basic narrative about Bill Clinton's life, do we start with that? You know, I'm very sympathetic to people, particularly those who are either adopted or for whatever reason don't know who their parents are. You know, that really tugs at you. As a child, I didn't know much about my own family, only because my mother and father were estranged from both of their parents for a period of time. So I just, you know, a little kid, you're asking, you know, what's my grandfather like? Shut up, kid. Well, my parents never said shut up when we asked those questions. But so in the case of Bill, you know, he was born shortly after his supposed birth father died. And I've never seen anybody really button that down. And of course, trying to button anything down in Arkansas is not the easiest thing to do, given there's so many still Clinton loyalists in the architecture of government, state government and local government throughout Arkansas. So to pull the real records and figure out what actually happened, to re-examine how the car accident supposedly claimed the life of Bill Clinton's biological father.
I didn't know about that.
You didn't know about that? See?
I tell you, I don't know that much about Bill Clinton's early life. I'm trying to extract some morons from the chat here.
Okay, but I think I believe the father's last name was Blythe, Blythe from memory. I could have that wrong. And also to get back into the origins of his mother, and what was her childhood really like? What was she really doing? I'm thinking Hot Springs when Bill was brought into this world, and then there hasn't been a lot written by third parties about Bill's crucial formative years, and by those I mean probably age 10 to age 18 in that time frame.
His prime raping years.
Well, what was going on as he came of age, as being from a youth through puberty and all that kind of stuff. What was he like in high school? Forget these adoring, vignettes, and somebody go back over that ground and ask, what was that all about? What was he like as a person? And then why did somebody raised in Baptist country decide to go to Georgetown? It's an unusual, I happen to know from one of my grandfathers was a Baptist missionary, actually. And at least I grew up hearing from my mother that there was an immense tension between Baptists and Catholics, at least in my mother's family. And so it's a little bit surprising that he would go from Arkansas, of all the places, such a gifted student, which he no doubt was, and so different from the average kind of student trying to get into the top schools around the country on the East, West Coast and in Chicago and elsewhere. Why would he pick Georgetown? What other schools did he apply to? Where was he accepted? Where was he turned down? Somebody going back over that ground might come away with a very different set of conclusions about Bill Clinton, and it might even help explain, how did he get the Rhodes Scholarship? That was not the easiest thing. What was he really like at Georgetown? And then, for the life of me, I've never been able to understand the coincidence, and I don't believe in coincidences. I can't even say coincidence.
And that's no coincidence.
Exactly, that's on purpose. No, I don't understand how Bill, during the Vietnam War, could have gotten the Rhodes Scholarship and then spent almost 22 months, roughly 22 months in the program, if you assume he started in June, when he didn't really. But anyway, and then decide to drop out 2 months before graduation. I've been to Oxford many times, England many times, and March in the odd years in England, you can actually have a spring. You can go from, the bitter, wet cold of London to just really glorious period. And if you're a student at Oxford, you don't really have to do much. All you have to do is, seriously, under their system, all you have to do is show graduate students, they just do their studies and independent studies and talk to their tutors every couple of weeks. That's all you have to do. And you have, sorry?
Well, I was just going to say that Dynamex is reminding us that Larry Nichols said that Wilbur Mills is Bill Clinton's actual father.
There have been all sorts of allegations. There's a suggestion that there was a Rockefeller involved, possibly. All kinds of people have had suggestions. I'm saying to go back and say, it's now long enough away from the heat of the 1992 to 2000 period. Hillary Clinton is certainly not going to be president of the United States, I would think, though she may try. So it's about time for people to go back in and throw away, all the political ropes and whatever, and go back over this ground and tell us what the F really happened here.
Speaking of who's your daddy, maybe Danny Williams should run for president in 2020.
That's right.
From the Clinton heritage.
Put another Clinton in the White House.
Yeah.
Right. So, but the point is, when you think about core elements of Bill Clinton's life, and then you think about this pattern and practice evidenced in certainly undergraduate, graduate school, or certainly graduate school, and then afterwards of lying under oath and then succeeding or attempting to obstruct justice. These seem to be persistent themes in the Bill Clinton, modus operandi, which I think was wholeheartedly embraced by Hillary, and then of course by their spawn, Chelsea. So we have here, when you think about this amazing, actually awful set of frauds going back over so many years, involving so many people, this pattern and practice of asserting the need that someone around the world needs help. Whether first it's, let's create economic opportunity for the Clintons when they.
Well, after we've destroyed their country.
Well, I was going to say for the Clintons when they needed the money to pay off their legal fees. We'll create the Clinton Economic Opportunity Initiative.
Right.
Shortly after we learned that we can't get any speaking fees because nobody likes us because we pardoned Mark Rich. And then when that doesn't really go too far, they say, well, it's HIV/AIDS. We could cure that. That'll get us, as much money. Oh, we can't do that. How about climate change? This long pattern and practice of asserting the obvious. We're going to have to think about the character for that AOC. In the same way that Dumby, which is what I like to now call Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, not Gumby, but Dumby.
Dumby, but isn't AOC? Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Right.
She's dancing on the roof like Friends now.
Is she really?
I don't think that was that bad. I mean, she's in college making a video where she's dancing. I don't know why that's bad.
Nothing bad about that.
No, she actually looks good in the video. I mean, I think she's a dope and shouldn't be in Congress, but she looks fine dancing in a video.
Now there wouldn't be anybody in this room who could maybe think about taking that video and maybe
doing something funny with it.
Like, for example, speeding it up a little bit and have some crazy talk coming out of her mouth, or something like that.
We'll have to check it out. Charles, what happened with the Bill and Hillary farewell tour that was selling out no stadiums whatsoever?
Yeah, I think they're trying to get that started again in April. They're waiting.
They're like the Who. They won't go away. Every single tour is the farewell tour.
Or Yertle the Turtle. But so anyway, they have this long pattern and practice of asserting the need for large sums of money to solve problems that nobody ever checks to see A, where the money went, or B, whether the problems actually could be solved in the manner that the Clintons assert they're going to do it. So that's an overview summary of what this Clinton Foundation has morphed to become. But as you listen to this presentation today, as we get into the bowels of the Clinton Foundation, understand one thing, that no work that has been done outside, not just Little Rock, outside the 27-acre site that the city of Little Rock leased into perpetuity, effectively, to something that was always supposed to be a presidential foundation.
They leased it in purgatory? Oh, perpetuity.
No work done outside the confines of that presidential center is validly authorized by the IRS, by any state or foreign authority as tax exempt. So that as these various, I don't know how many accounting firms are left that could possibly consider issuing an accounting audit for this thing for the period that just ended last week, December 31st, 2018. Because the opening question that a new accounting firm should ask, and the ones that are already done work should be planning, how best to liquidate their Little Rock offices or whatever office did the audit. But the opening question that an auditing firm must ask is this Clinton Foundation actually a validly authorized, in federal, state, and foreign terms, tax-exempt entity? Because if it is not, then you cannot affix your name, your signature, to the audit opinion. And if you decide, with all of these videos that we put out, and we're not the only ones complaining about the Clinton Foundation, there are many other reputable people out there who have written about it, who are concerned about it, who are urging government authorities to do something about it. If you don't even bother to check this basic fact out by contacting the Secretary of State's office in Arkansas, and then by reading carefully, as I have and lawyers have, the actual rules pertaining to setting up a charity in Arkansas, if you don't even do that and put your signature on the line so you can get some checks, so you can get invited to, I don't know, a pool party up on the top of the Presidential Center, or maybe back to Chappaqua, for, I don't know, a cocktail lunch, you're basically, I think in 2019, in this crucial year between the midterm elections and the national election, as presidential politics heat up again, you are putting your firm at severe risk. So as you listen to this, remember, nothing that I talk about that has anything to do with work outside of that presidential center in a certain portion of Little Rock is validly authorized. Yet you will soon see that that is the overwhelming enormity of the Clinton Foundation, is all the stuff they do illegally outside the presidential center.
So perhaps it's time for those people to get in line to take a photo with Truman the Taggart.
Exactly, exactly.
That's what they're going to need to do. Okay, so yeah, let's just get to
this next slide.
Yes.
So I guess, Jason, you told me that you're up to what, 78,000?
I think it's about 78,500. Let's take a look and see where we're at. You know, Charles, we should also remind people, 78,418.
That's very good.
Thank you, yes, and thank you for your contribution to that. It's important that people who are interested in seeing all of the videos that we've done, and this is the 133rd, there's that pesky 33, Charles, but they're all here in the Sunday with Charles playlist on the Jason Goodman YouTube channel. It includes all of the episodes we've done here on Sundays, as well as every Charles Ortel is Closing In episode. And it's literally hours of fun for the family, and the FBI and whoever else should be investigating this instead of persecuting innocent people like Dr. Corsi.
I'd say it's a lot of fun for most families except one.
Right.
But if we just could go back to that slide for a sec, and that is an excellent playlist, and thank you for doing that. This approach that we're taking here, I remember when you and I started on it, I checked around with a few supposed experts, friends of mine, some you know, some you don't know, testing, getting their reaction. These were more traditional media types, very successful people, long careers, in some cases 5 decades. And I said, you know, I had tested the idea with John Solomon at the Washington Times doing a radio show much shorter. He would only let me do half an hour, or an hour, I guess it was. And I told him, I said, look, you know, on Sunday afternoon, there isn't, normally speaking, there is not that much content out there, in part because the very famous and highly paid anchors don't want to work on Sunday, and it makes sense, right?
To watch golf.
Well, yeah.
I'm kidding.
Yeah, I mean, I like golf, and it gets a big viewership. It's actually a very relaxing thing to watch.
Yeah.
But after the morning shows, which I think at this point are so bad that I wouldn't even watch any, let alone never watch CNN. But you know, the Fox shows are sinking into the swamp, in my view.
Yeah.
There isn't much as you're setting up for the week ahead that takes you through stories that are important, that are going to have an impact on your life in the coming week, and then that drill down into the news and into the facts, so that and share important links so that you, the audience, can try to get up to speed and maybe get ahead of us. So we decided, Jason and I, that we would try this approach. And initially, I remember we met with a few Hollywood people, remember, and they were saying, word came back, you know, nobody wants to listen to a bunch of old white guys talk about anything. It's like, well, therein lies perhaps the problem in a country that actually is not. It's not like there are only 2 older white guys, you know, in America. I mean, it's actually, America is still today majority white and actually older. The population is aging because the younger folk aren't having children. So this idea was one that we decided to test. We have been testing it. We're pushing it along, and thank you to the crowd for watching and for, by word of mouth, helping us build this. Jason has made a decision, which I wholeheartedly agree with, not to, you know, pay to advertise and promote it, whereas some other people do pay for advertisement and promotion. And you know, the most effective, ad pros will tell you, the most effective endorsement comes from somebody you already know and respect, who then says, you ought to consider watching Sunday with Charles or Closing In or Crowdsource the Truth. So it's tougher to build this audience the way we're trying to do it, but thank you for watching, particularly you, the most loyal of you, who send me and Jason ideas, constructive suggestions. We really appreciate that. And you can do that either through my website or through Twitter. And we do try to be responsive, Jason and I, but We don't. It's not a good idea to try to send me 50 pages of text and exhibits that isn't organized, because I certainly will not look at that. But a short email, a short tweet, a direct message, I try to respond to all of those.
Yeah. Yeah, and Charles, the other thing that those experts advised is do not work with tigers. That's a bad idea.
Don't work with tigers and don't work with cats. I mean, this could be a monster media enterprise if you could just get over your cat allergy, and we could have these cats chase Christmas ornaments around a room with, I don't know.
Right. People love watching cat videos on YouTube. And Charles, there's been all this dust up with Patreon, but I'm feeling like the more information that comes out and the more data we have on this, it feels very much like there's being pressure put on Patreon by banks and payment processors and stuff. So I hope that people will stay with us on patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, or make a one-time sponsorship payment to paypal.me/crowdsourcethetruth. $10 sponsors are still getting that Sunday with Charles screensaver. They're flying off the shelves, Charles.
Good.
And people are really loving it. For people who don't want to sponsor the channel, another great way they can really help is if everybody watching just email the link to this video to maybe 2 people that they know who they think would find it interesting. It's a great way to help. It helps us grow the audience. You can also hit the like button. You can subscribe to the channel. There's lots of ways that people can help the show to grow and continue. So I hope that people will do that.
Yeah, and thanks to all of you who are already watching.
Yeah.
So with that, why don't we'll spend a few minutes on, there've been a number of interesting things that just happened in the last little while here. And of course, this coming week will be the first, I would argue, full news week when most of the top anchors are
right.
back and, realizing that they've got a whole year ahead of them before they get their next bonus or pay increase or whatever, so they've got to actually work. There was this thing on Zero Hedge this morning where, and I know people have views of, my starting place for people who won't use their real name is I'm not particularly interested in what they have to say.
Kim Schmitz.
Is that his name?
Yeah.
Schmitz. But anyway, he's had his name changed to Kim.com. This morning when I sent this to you, there were only 3,000 shares to this story. But the text of the story suggests that on prior occasions where Kim.com has suggested that big news is coming, he has a pretty good track record of big news subsequently coming. But we'll see. This is what he just tweeted out, that there's going to be much more stuff coming out, monumental stuff, he says. And taking a step back, again, I don't particularly care what somebody who won't use his real name has to say, but when you look at the facts that we've laid out for you, that the Clintons have been involved in so many projects, whether she is Secretary of State, he is President, in their personal lives, with their foundation, taking money from large foundations and large governments where there must be a paper trail, and where the paper trail that you would expect to have seen in both the Podesta email dump and the Secretary of State email dump was not there. Just suggests to me that some, definitely in the different governments, definitely in the English government, the Canadian government, the Irish government, the French government, the Swedish government, Saudi, I go on and on, Australia, definitely somewhere hidden away, there are records of emails back and forth of elements in the government saying, there have been all these reports in the press. There's this madcap team here at Crowdsource the Truth, and there are other people who are just doing video. Why the hell are we, how much money did we spend on this Clinton Foundation, and who authorized it? There have to be smoking gun emails like that, and there have to be, a crusader inside, let's say, the Department of whatever it's Foreign Investment in the UK, an academic type who took a look at what happened in Mozambique or Haiti or whatever and said, now wait a minute. The first time back in 2002, nobody really knew too much about this HIV/AIDS stuff back then in the foundation world, and Bill needed something to do, so he said he wanted to do it, and we thought we'd get beyond. And back then, you could be forgiven for maybe sending $1 million or $2 million if you're the government of England. But now in this case, you got a charity that's under assault. We're told by reliable people, it's been confirmed, the FBI has definitely been investigating this thing for a while. The IRS has been investigating this. Where are the emails, that are back and forth from the skeptics about this, and they're always skeptics, right?
Certainly the NSA has them. I mean, we've heard from countless sources, Bill Binney, Dennis Montgomery, this whole thing with the Hammer computer that Mueller somehow helped put together or commissioned or whatever. They have them. They have them. My question is Mr. Schmitz talking about something to do with Hillary Clinton, or is he talking about something to do with the dark overlord and these leaks related to 9/11? And also, where's his information on Seth Rich?
I know. But I'm somebody, you know, on this stuff, I can say with high confidence that from what I've seen of the Clinton Foundation record that's in the public domain, my guess in terms of number of pages is that we have 5 to 10% of the record, is my guess. Because understand that, take Unitate, which we're going to talk about in a second. Unitate required monthly, if not quarterly, reports on the various projects. A lot of these big donors require, you know, detailed proposals before they give you any money, and then due diligence questionnaires, legal questionnaires, meetings. There's always, when you set up a meeting with Bill Clinton, I doubt you just say, "Hey, Bill, I'm coming over," unless you're the Energizer Bunny, in which case maybe you just come over. But there's no record of that. But if it has to do with the foundation and money and travel, you probably have a fair amount of information out there for every single junket that Bill went on beginning January 29th or whatever it was, 2001, involving the foundation. So where are all those records? You know, where were the requests, where was the notification back and forth, you know, after Bill got back from, let's say, Mozambique in 1992 or 3, or whenever it was, in September 2002, you know, there had to be security detail preparations, there had to be bills, there had to be back and forth, and, you know, all sorts of stuff. None of that stuff's present. This fiction that Bill Clinton doesn't use email, I think, was destroyed.
Yeah.
His email address, I believe, used to be bc at, I think it was...
IamHorny.com.
But no, we put it out, I think, the last couple of presentations.
Doxing Bill Clinton.
No, it was. I didn't dox it. It was the Podesta emails.
Well.
So we have then. This is really an interesting thing. This is in the Hill. Just came out. I think this person. I don't know much about Morgan Chalfant, but this is a rehash that came out this morning.
Morgan Chalfant? Who is it?
Chalfant.
Oh.
Or forgive me if I'm not pronouncing your name properly.
The Trump Tower Moscow proposal.
But this is actually a pretty detailed thing that is going back over the ground. Initially, Trump said that that the Moscow project was dead. I forget when he said it was dead. Early in 2016, and this is a rehash claiming that maybe there's evidence that Moscow project stretched in even as close to the election day. The significance being, if the Trump organization indeed had been involved trying to do a big tower in Moscow, ideally roping in Putin, maybe with the offer, as is suggested in various scurrilous sheets, of a free apartment, gigantic penthouse to get the thing across the line. From what I know of Trump, I've never met him, the notion that he would give anything away for free is, I don't believe that, particularly in 2015 and 16, let alone a $50 million penthouse in his prime building to be built in Moscow. So anyway, they're back at it again. I count the Hill as mainstream. They're back at it trying to say there is a narrative here that Mueller, and this has, look at this, 7,400 comments.
Well, what are the key 5 things they want us to know? Because let me ask you this, Charles. Even if, let's say Trump did say, hey, help me build a tower in Moscow, that still doesn't equate to doing anything with the election. That might be annulment or something, or improper use of his position, but what has Russia done to influence the election? We have no evidence. They paid $4,700 to Google. That is some weak-ass influence.
I think we really need that Gilbert Gottfried clip, right? I mean, you know, let's say on the one hand,
yeah, right.
On the other hand. But yeah, I mean, on the one hand, you got Hillary Clinton, who allows herself to be quoted. Shouldn't I be 50 points ahead, and then doesn't
also taking billions from, millions from Saudi, Qatar, everybody.
And, having her cronies, her campaign chairman very much involved in a Russian project during the election.
Right.
you know, they what was that called? Joule Unlimited, I think, is what I'm thinking of there.
The energy company.
Yeah, yeah. Which an arm of the Russian government did make a significant investment, and on paper, giving him and his family, if he transferred the shares to his family and didn't retain them, a big marked-in gain. They don't want to investigate that.
And Podesta was revealed in these Dark Overlord documents, having something to do with defending somebody with 9/11. The Saudis, defending the Saudis.
Podesta, brother or Tony or John?
I think Tony. Are they both lawyers?
I don't know. John is a lawyer. I don't know. Tony's a lobbyist.
One of the Podestas. I was watching something about the Dark Overlord. I'm still trying to figure out if that's real or what.
I think that in the Podestas, it's one of those you buy one, you get the other one free, and more or less.
Too many.
Exactly. But no, we don't need to go into the depth here. But this is just an argument that we're going to see resuscitated here. As the news comes in that Mueller has indeed extended the grand jury for another period, I don't know if it's for another 6 months or longer than that. Mueller has been working on this officially before a grand jury for about a year and a half. And a year and a half is an awfully long time. Of course, Mueller and Comey and maybe Rosenstein was somewhat involved. Took 4 years. They couldn't see the obvious Clinton Foundation fraud, and they had grand juries open in that case. So, you know, the fact that they only spent a year and a half on it and found nothing to implicate the Trump campaign for Russian collusion.
Yeah, pretty bad at investigating.
Yeah, exactly.
Or either that or there's nothing to find.
I mean, it's a good thing he wasn't head of the FBI for the second longest period of any. Oh, but he was.
Well, wait a minute. So he's pretty bad at investigating the Clintons. Perhaps he's equally bad at investigating Trump, but he's certainly burning up shoe leather trying to do it.
I guess.
Totally bizarre, Charles.
Yeah. So yeah, this is amazing. This is something that David Brock,
oh boy,
got this into NBC. Of course, you know they'll take anything. This idiot David Brock, who honestly, if the and I'm not turning on David Brock. I mean, initially he was negative on the Clintons, and then he jumped ship. Now he's savaging Bernie supporters. Anyone who might criticize the Clintons. And the nerve of this prick, frankly.
Exactly.
I mean, David Brock, there isn't an element of his paperwork for Media Matters for America and his affiliates. There's not one element of that thing that is lawfully filed or operated anywhere in the few places where they bothered to fill the paperwork out. And of course, he's got immunity because they're tied to the Clintons, and maybe the Clintons have reach into the attorneys general at the state level and secretaries of state and the IRS and the FBI. No one wants to investigate this idiot.
What happened to that citizen's audit? That guy was doing such a great job of revealing.
He went to work for.
What was his name?
I don't know. I forgot. But he went to work.
Andrew something.
Andrew Kerr, Kerr. Good prompt. Mm-hmm. Helpful. He went to work for the Daily Caller. I don't know if he's still working there. But the nerve of this Brock, you notice that the approach here is that people who used to be very much in favor of freedom of speech
are stomping
on the left.
Now?
It's now, the modus operandi is silence dissent. Dissent cannot be tolerated. And, that to me is very scary. Back in, when I was alive in 1970 as a student.
Wait a minute.
As a student, we were very much all in favor of freedom of speech, and dissenting views need to be listened to. Whatever happened to you have an absolute right to be believed and all this kind of stuff. Now you're saying that this idiot David Brock, who is nothing more than a sock puppet for the Clintons and the Obamas at this point, is saying, has the nerve of this guy to try to silence another person who, frankly, I enjoy listening to him because he reminds me of Larry David. But
I mean, they're kind of rolling out yesterday's news with Bernie. I liked Bernie at one time, but so many of the things that Jan Weinberg has brought out have shown that I think that not so much a matter of Bernie getting cheated necessarily as it was Bernie being complicit with a fraudulent plan.
But I don't need, and I don't think, I don't encourage, in fact, we're doing the opposite. We're encouraging, you came up with the idea of encouraging people you don't physically know, because there's too many of these people in the crowd to actually know everyone, to go out and chase the truth down. Bring the truth to the public. That's the whole idea. Whereas these people want to just say, you've got an inconvenient observation, shut up.
Exactly.
We're going to take away your right to speak. We're going to take away your bank account, take away your employment, shame you out of existence. These are not our values, to quote a great American president, Barack Obama. These are not American values.
They don't even want debate. There's no place for climate deniers.
Right.
See, that's what they always want to do, Charles. With vaccinations, they want to make it a binary kind of a thing. Either you're anti-vax and crazy, or a normal person, and you're going to put 90 vaccines in your kid, even though they haven't been tested, and the CDC has buried results that this particular vaccine has this particular dangerous ingredient.
Yeah. It's this of the various things we'll talk about today, this Brock assault on dissent, jumping right into NBC. Here's NBC again. You know, you don't see this on Alex Jones. You don't see this on RT even. You probably wouldn't see it on the equivalent of East German television today, if there is such a thing.
East German television a few years ago, they could call it.
Well,
wasn't there some interaction between David Brock and Peter W. Smith back in the Troopergate days?
Yeah, Peter Smith started this guy's career.
Wow.
Peter Smith is the one who hired David Brock to write the story about Paula Jones. He's the one who gave him the money.
Oh, and there's something that you've just triggered in my head that I won't say on air.
Okay, good.
I think you know what I'm talking about.
I do. So if we go back into the slides.
Yes.
We have, if we could just pull up this YouTube here. Until recently, I didn't know who, and I don't really know who Dave Janda is, but he has been.
He's good.
Yeah, he's got quite, I don't know if we see the subscribers here.
No, that's not his channel. He has a lot.
Yeah,
and also, I think he has like a paid subscription service to watch his premium videos.
Yeah. Well, this says his channel has 269,000 views, or is that?
No. This is somebody make your point.
Oh,
who
I
is
see.
Reposting a Dave Janda video. I'm not sure what his channel is.
But Dave Janda puts out quality stuff. I've never met the man, but he's made very kind comments about me, and he's
nice house too.
Seems to be convinced that things are going on with regard to the Clinton Foundation, something that obviously I believe as well. And then if you go into there's this CNN story, and it hurts me to even put this up here, because the last thing I want to do is help CNN, chicken noodle news. But apparently, Whitaker revealed to a colleague, I guess it was to Ed Meese, former Attorney General.
Wow, he's still alive?
I think that's what the story says from memory, that the investigation is very much ongoing. Yeah, former Attorney General Ed Meese during a breakfast meeting.
So that's Huber is still investigating, they're saying.
That's what Whitaker.
But what is he talking about? Federal prosecutor in Utah, top.
That's Huber.
Yeah.
But it's Whitaker who told
Tell
Meese
him,
that,
yeah.
and this is CNN reporting gossip.
Got it.
Right, but you know, right? I mean, maybe they should get into it. They should probably get back into that ancient alien stuff. I mean, that's maybe they should do a food channel.
Actually, the Food Network is pretty good. They do a lot of their shooting right around the corner here. Martha Stewart used to be one block away.
But they could maybe do crappy food. They could do.
No one would watch that. Although, I don't know. I'm not going to make a McDonald's comment.
Yeah, I know. That would be dangerous.
Dave Janda's channel is Operation Freedom. Thank you, UFC NHL. That's someone who likes the universal fighting, the ultimate fighting championship and hockey.
Very good. So, I don't know, Jason, if you saw this next thing, and the audience should really care about this. This is, I used to enjoy reading the New Yorker. I confused this with the New Yorker. Never will I read the New York Times again. I mean, they would have to get rid of their entire news staff, top news staff, and editorial staff, change direction.
Change the name.
I don't think there's any way to fix this thing, especially given the history and the culture there. It's just it's a silence dissent culture over there. But anyway, this is something, and I hope people pick up on this. Apparently now, publishers have started to slip in into contracts of writers morals clauses that say, we'll publish your work.
Don't have sex with the sources.
Well, no, they wouldn't do that. That's
they wouldn't go that far.
They wouldn't go that far. Or, Les Monvis is going to be in charge of diversity, I guess. The New York Times. But no, this is a dangerous kind of clause.
Head of human resources.
Exactly. This is a dangerous clause. It's so one-sided, if it's true, that the publisher would have the right to, after you get your advance, after they publish your work, in their sole discretion, if they decide that you've done something, in so many words, that's obnoxious, in their view, they can, I don't know if they can get the money back, but they can cancel your contract, they could, basically make your life miserable, in their sole view. And it seems to me the way life should work is before you agree to publish a work, you should do due diligence on the author. And you should, you do as much due diligence as you want through the date the work is agreed, then through the date it's published. But the notion that, you should have to concern yourself with a morals clause that could be enforced by some gnome, David Brock, for example, or David Brock's boyfriend, or, that's crazy land. And that may actually help push along this tipping point that you're beginning to see. I was in the Upper West Side yesterday, and I very seldom go over into Indian country, and I was walking down
It's almost Canada over there.
Exactly. I was walking down Broadway, and I saw this coffee shop. Then I realized it was a bookshop, and then I realized it had a print-on-demand, big print-on-demand. It's a Shakespeare book. It's a very interesting place, and so I had some time.
Shakespeare books?
Well, there's different. There's I don't know if they're franchises, but
they used to have it down by NYU.
Right, but now there's one up there in 65th Street or something.
So what? They print a book in the store?
They have it's a mixture. It's like if you want to know, the standard kind of book off the shelf, you can get a hardback, you can get a paperback, a small selection. If you want more than what's in the store, they have a big warehouse, and they'll get it to you by email quickly. Either they'll send it to you or whatever. And then if you want a cup of coffee or a breakfast something, you can have that. And then if there's a book that you would just like printed, they'll do that. If it's in the public domain, they'll do it for you on demand. Wow. So you're going to start seeing, I think, an acceleration in the shift. The idea that the publishing houses control everything, the idea that the big media franchises control the distribution of content, that's already broken. But in coming days, months, and years, it's going to shift even further to the point of, I've always wondered why an author would accept the idea, and and the audience knows that I'm in the process of writing several books. I would like to know actually who bought the book. I'd be very interested in the profile of who reads whatever I end up writing if it gets published, and I'd be very interested in not having there be such a blockchain.
Oh.
Forgive that word.
Yeah.
I said blocked chain, not blockchain, between me and the person who bought the book, because there's so many levels of margin.
Can't Kindle tell you that? I mean,
of course, I'm just saying. So you think about this. Here are the high and mighty publishing houses saying, you know what? We're going to make it the balance of power even less interesting to an author by trying to cram this crap down your throat about a morals clause. And I don't mind per se elements that what I really find obnoxious to what I read there is the idea that some gnome will have, no precedent.
Sole discretion.
Yeah, in their
more
sole
like Pyongyang Yang discretion.
Exactly. Exactly. Maybe that's Kim Jong. What's the guy's name? Kim Jong Un.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe he is converting our media faster than we're converting his way of opening up
a chain
North Korea.
of supercuts.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's just one thing I want to bring to people's attention. Now, this is a question that I would answer in a way that should get people's cautionary genes flowing here. I don't think 2019 is going to be a repeat of 2008. I think it's going to be a lot worse.
I knew you were going to say that.
And I really think when people need to stop. With the money that they have, it is very, very difficult. The facts are such that when you look in the best evidence that the U.S. government puts out, and some of it's very good, and you think about your true net worth. If you have a mortgage, you do not likely have a financial net worth. right?
You owe too much on the property.
Because you're going to owe a lot on the property, and it's highly unlikely, looking at the evidence across America, that you have financial assets that exceed the value of your mortgage. It's most unlikely. And so the number of people who actually have real wealth, financial wealth, in the market where they can invest the way the big boys invest, buying individual stocks as opposed to mutual funds, that is a very small universe of people. And too many people have made on paper money, whether it be Bitcoin or elsewhere, without really thinking about what the risks they were taking. Mm. You get lulled into a false sense of security in the capital markets, and just as that happens is when the hammer drops. And I see, for various reasons, the tricks that Barack Obama was able to get away with, and to a lesser extent Donald Trump, suppressing interest rates and running gigantic budget deficits, having money flow out of our government for guns and butter with nobody checking to see how much of that was actually being stolen. We are past the end of the rope here, and you're seeing the warning signs. And people shouldn't get all excited about whether the market is down on a given day, up big the next day. What you should care about is that there's so much seesawing. It's like when you're in heavy seas and you see your boats going up and down and up and down.
Yeah.
You probably, unless you're somebody who's very comfortable going through a hurricane at sea, you probably should think about going into shore. And similarly, what we've seen in the last little while in the markets, particularly since October of 2018, when oil started going down, the market went down precipitously, we've seen a change in conditions. We see rising concern about this contest that we have between the House, the Senate, and Trump. We're certain that 2020 is going to be a crazy election. Who knows who's going to win?
They could put a swear jar on the floor of Congress and raise money that way.
Yeah, that would be a good idea. Wouldn't take cash though, right?
Right, Bitcoin only swear jar.
Yeah, but the thing here is that things are setting up here for rocky times, and because we've been at this now for 10 years with crazy deficits and low interest rates, the great unwind of all that is going to hurt a lot more than what happened in 2008. People put lipstick on a lot of pigs in 2008 and 9, just breaking all the rules.
I think that's racist against pigs. You got to now, it's rolling a turd in glitter is the new.
Okay, that's racist against turds.
Maybe.
Yeah, and glitter. But so generally speaking, this is I know you ski, Jason. This is double black diamond territory. You don't send a beginner, to the top a bump run for the first run, and tell them, meet you in the bar.
Right.
You're more likely to meet the person in the hospital.
Sonny Bono.
Yeah, and then this, we've talked about GE in the past. I focused on GE by accident, really, back in 2007. But it turned out it was a good thing to have spent time on. Here's an article in Bloomberg that I think is fundamentally wrong, and we'll make some news here. The biggest piece of General Electric's capital operation or finance operation is an entity that used to be called Guinness Peak Aviation. In 1993, I remember I set up the fund in Ireland. Some very close Irish friends arranged for me to get the inside deal to buy Guinness Peak Aviation. And because I was close to Prince Waleed through my brother-in-law, who was his top guy, and because Waleed owns, had rescued Citibank, we came up with the idea that all Waleed would have to say is that he would give whatever money Guinness Peak Aviation needed, and he would be able to buy it for a song, because everyone else would be saying, well, this guy's made of money, we can't compete against that. So he would stabilize everything. He could cut a deal basically to put whatever price you want down. By the time he closed, he'd need to come up with a lot less capital. But because he dithered around and he wasn't, he was just behaved in a very immature fashion, and for other reasons, GE was able to swoop in and buy this unit that they're now trying to sell. Now, it was smaller back in 1993, obviously, and GE added to GPA, and they had other operations within GPA. But the core of this thing is aircraft leasing business really was turbocharged by GPA. This is an article suggesting, well, isn't this great? Maybe they'll get $40 billion for it, and then they can pay off $30 billion of debt, and then they'll have $10 billion to do stuff. What they miss here is that when you take a jewel is too strong a word, but a good piece out of GE, you're left with the chicken shit, right? And you still haven't figured out how to pay the pensions down and how to regularize all your tax exposures around the world. What about your environmental cleanup responsibilities, particularly in the Northeast, but around the world? You got all sorts of problems in GE, and the financial statements for all these large multinational companies are not yet transparent enough. They don't yet give regulators a clear picture of what is the financial condition of General Electric inside the United States, what is its balance sheet, its income statement, its cash flow inside the United States, and what are its balance sheets, income, and cash flow in every important foreign country. So that foreign regulators can say, GE's telling us a song and dance, just like the Clintons say, we can do whatever we want. When you're just supposed to be a library in a certain small footprint in Little Rock, you fly around to Mozambique, and next thing you know, you're helping the president of Mozambique steal money. Give aid money, in theory, to help HIV/AIDS. In the same way, GE, because it's so complicated and because it is allowed, as are all public companies, to take time putting together their reports, is able to bamboozle regulators everywhere around the world. And even in a perfect case where, let's say, Apollo does come in, takes out a big checkbook, borrows from, who knows, Bank of America or somebody, a lot of money to give GE $40 billion, even in that case where it succeeds, GE will still have its vexing structural problems. It will still have too many middle managers. It will still have too many legacy managers. It will have a culture that is evidently virtually impossible to change in the required time, and it'll be a gigantic, over-leveraged old boat in the middle of these seas that are already going left to right as oil prices continue to stay low and maybe trend lower. So this is a time frame where if some broker calls you and says, GE used to be 60, you can get it for 8. How many tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands do you want to put in? You invite that broker into your house, and then you introduce that broker to your lawyer, and you say, if you ever call me again, I'm going to sue the living shit out of you.
Well, just tell him to carve off a little piece to invest in the glitter company.
Exactly. So then this is really already fun. We're only the first month. We've got this Elizabeth Warren.
Oh yeah.
Hiawatha.
That beer video is just tearing up the internet.
Well, she went then out to Iowa. Did you hear about this? We might have been busy. She went out to Iowa, and she had to do a mea culpa. Somebody asked her a question, what's this about the DNA test? And she had to say, not only I'm not a person of color, and then there was a follow-up question, well, what tribe are you with? I'm not a member of a tribe. And to make matters even worse than all that, the sound misfunctioned or malfunctioned, and she had no sound, no whatever for a period of this thing. This is possibly a less auspicious start to a presidential campaign than Hillary Clinton in the Scooby-Doo van. You remember that? Great fanfare. I'm going to get in a van. I'm not going to fly at night by private and have the van go. I'm going to be in the Scooby-Doo van. I'm going to drive all the way out there. You mean? And then she goes into the restaurant with Uma and humanizes herself. You mean I need cash to pay for this? I have to pay for this? I don't have any cash. Speak to my cash machine. That's Uma.
Yeah. Well, I sympathize with her audio problems, Charles, but I do agree it's a pathetic start, and I don't believe that Elizabeth Warren will crack the glass ceiling. She might crack a beer on the floor.
I bet you that even opening the beer was probably staged. It was probably pre-opened.
It was a little weird because she offered her husband a beer, and he was like, no, thank you. And I was like, oh, I bet you he doesn't like this idea.
And this, if we start with this first cover, I actually used this on Bloomberg, and they asked me about what did I think about the Citibank public offering in 2009, and I said, it kind of reminds me of this. I actually mentioned this. It kind of reminds me of this National Lampoon cover. Buy this. Buy these shares of Citibank or we'll shoot this dog.
It's such a cute dog, too.
But this obviously is a horrible thing to even think about, but the cover is legendary. It's probably, So I saw the next story I couldn't believe. we'll put it up next. This is just amazing. In rural Arkansas, a policeman came to somebody's house to investigate rumors of an aggressive dog, and they shot a chihuahua. I mean, why? I can't conceive of a chihuahua.
They have body camera footage.
I wouldn't put that on. Oh well.
Did they actually?
It's 3 minutes. I wouldn't put it up.
My goodness.
People.
So we can't get body camera footage from Las Vegas or Seth Rich, but they have body cam footage of shooting the Taco Bell dog.
Yeah, Pepe Le Pew or whatever. Whose 73rd birthday is in fact today.
Oh, and I forgot to tell you the rest of that story that's not appropriate for on air about George Carlin, but Pepe Le Pew's birthday is not news according to George Carlin.
All right. And then, I haven't seen Chelsea in the. We've just done that. I haven't seen Chelsea around of late. She lives not far away from here, but one wonders whether she was in Arkansas recently. I mean, not Arkansas, in Las Vegas recently.
Oh,
you see what happened?
I did not see this story.
We'll see the picture. Las Vegas authorities search for a woman who ran over the manicurist with a stolen car after not paying the bill.
Wow.
Yeah, that kind of looks like Chelsea when the Glamour cover, when she had her hair straight.
So this woman got a manicure, didn't pay, and then
stole a car, decided to run over the manicurist. I mean, and there's nothing wrong with there's nothing wrong with that picture.
That's brutal. Did the manicurist live?
I don't know. And the suspect's name is Crystal Whipple.
Oh my goodness. Crystal Whipple, look at that. Unbelievable. Not good. I recently just saw a video of Suge Knight running over two guys as he angrily left the set of, Straight Outta Compton?
I think he's still dead.
He's in jail, Suge Knight. The
jail.
guy he ran over is dead, and he's, there for manslaughter. Wow. I think he's in prison for the rest of his life. I mean, he just totally killed this guy.
Well, you shouldn't be doing that.
No, do not do that.
All right, so this whole idea, we started on it in the cover, of mission creep, where you start out, you go to the IRS and you say, the rules say, specific, narrow purposes that have to be, in fact, charitable and that are set out in the Articles of Incorporation, the controlling legal document for a nonprofit corporation. We've shown you before, this is an extensive body of IRS regulations that's regularly updated. And with that, we don't need to go to the link because we've done it before. People can do it at their leisure. If you doubt that there are strict rules, try reading this and then send me an email. If you really believe after reading this that there are no strict rules, send me an email and we'll try to provide some help to you. But the rules are really very specific, very well thought through. There's a body of law here predating the income tax, well predating the income tax, imposition of income tax. And it's a very interesting analysis. And it's crystal clear. I'll just read this out loud. Informal aggregations of individuals who state that they just came together or that they never had articles of incorporation are not tax entities to which a ruling may be issued. So in other words, Bill Clinton, waking up, having just pardoned Mark Rich, I've got it. I'll fight HIV/AIDS around the world. When he has no connection, formal connection to the foundation, doesn't have his office yet in New York. He's running around having these meetings at Harvard campus and different places around the world, giving speeches and all this kind of stuff. He's not formally an executive. He's not a director. He's just had his law licenses. He's in the process of either submitting them to avoid being disbarred or negotiating with the Supreme Court to do the same thing. He and Ira Magaziner and the other people who are jumping around doing these different initiatives, they clearly are not doing so beginning in 2001 as a lawfully organized charity. It's just crystal clear. And then we've shown you this before. The reason I did it this way, and I'm going to explain this, Jason, so that people don't wonder what was wrong here. I decided to illustrate, and this is a little wonky here, the fact that the mission of the Clinton Foundation had strayed a lot, was to take, by March 24th, 2004, so almost 4 years in, or 3 years in anyway, to operating illegally charities that were never organized. Bruce Lindsay, who I think is probably the worst lawyer in Arkansas, because
And that's hard.
And that's, yeah, well, or anywhere, maybe the worst lawyer in the United States of America, to pretend that he's a lawyer. He incorporates this thing, Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS Initiative, Inc. And you look here, it says the purposes are exclusively charitable, and they have to do with fighting HIV and AIDS in resource-poor areas of the world. Now, resource-poor areas of the world is hardly a specific definition. What do you mean by resource?
It's vague.
Right. What do you mean by poor? What do you mean by areas? The world, we don't have to, I mean, I'm pretty sure he's not talking about doing
Mars.
stuff in the middle of the ocean.
Okay.
And we don't have to debate what world we're talking about, but we are talking about people who would debate the word, meaning of the word is. Oh, yeah.
When you talk about mission creep, it causes me to think of our friend Sidney Powell and her little meme here about creeps on a mission. This is a wonderful piece of artwork.
It really is. It really is.
Sorry to distract.
That's okay. So we look back in the slide you have on the left-hand side. This is Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS Initiative, Inc., which was set up illegally March 24th, or was incorporated illegally March 24th, 2004, because at that time the Presidential Center had just, the construction was just coming to a close, but they did not amend their articles of incorporation to do this stuff, to do HIV/AIDS. And if Lindsay wants to hide behind the fact that he's a lawyer, okay, you understand Arkansas state law enough to file these articles as an incorporator. You have to prove when you set up a corporation that it isn't just Bruce Lindsay by himself. You have to have at least 2 other directors. You have to have meetings where you establish the corporation and adopt articles of incorporation that are signed by all 3 or more trustees, set up bylaws, make filings inside and outside Arkansas, and there's no evidence that any of that was done properly with regard to this thing. And there's every evidence that the Clinton Foundation did not have the power to do this lawfully on March 24th, 2004. And Bruce Lindsay, of course, had over time a developing conflict of interest. He was the guy who set this thing up, this illegal thing. He then becomes CEO of the parent. He becomes a director of this thing. This thing makes all kinds of fraudulent filings all over the place, including a fraudulent application for tax exemption, which there's no evidence that it ever gets. It nonetheless raises all kinds of money. We'll get into that in a second. And then scroll forward to September 29th, 2009. This is the Articles of Incorporation for this Clinton Health Access Initiative, which has a similar, arguably not the same, acronym as this thing. Mm-hmm. Look how its purposes have changed. In red we show where this one says exclusively charitable, the new one says exclusively charitable, religious, educational, or scientific. The Clinton Foundation has no authority whatsoever to engage in religious purposes.
But that's interesting because Barack Obama Foundation is talking about that too. They have something in mind.
I think the reason is that religious charities hide under the freedom of religion and get to report less. But you can't do, this is just a bright line.
How disgusting is that?
It's pretty disgusting, but it's not as bad as what he did to Juanita Broderick.
There's a lot of people that do that try to go to religion to prey on people who are religious.
Really?
I mean,
I'm shocked.
Yeah.
I'm shocked. So in the first instance, they try to assert that they're able to do more than just simply charitable. And when you get into it, you'll see that link we provide that charitable is there's an actual formal definition of what charitable means. And of course, the Clinton Foundation doesn't meet that definition. Certainly, Clinton Health Access Initiative had no lawful authority to go beyond the Clinton Foundation purposes. You notice it says here working with governments, and we've gotten to this issue that a charity cannot be an agent of a government. Right? So that's questionable. Now we're helping people living in resource-poor areas. Now what does that mean? If you live in a sketchy part of, let's say, the Bronx, you can help
Detroit.
them? I mean, what does this mean? And notice now, where before we're talking about HIV and AIDS, now they're talking about HIV and AIDS, malaria, and tuberculosis. And then at the bottom, and to undertake other economic and social development activities that help alleviate poverty and disease in resource-poor settings. I'll give you an example of something that I would say could fit into that. You work with a crooked dictator in a crooked country to steal money from a multilateral aid organization so that this crooked leader of, let's say, former leader of Mozambique can have a ski chalet in Gstaad. That would mean I think that would be undertaking other economic and social development activities that help alleviate poverty and disease in resource-poor settings. I mean, that's not necessarily charitable. But beyond all this, you look at this, and as I said, I think in a prior broadcast, you don't need to hire an expensive lawyer to look at this and say, this is obviously fraud. Right? They had no authority to do this. They did it anyway. They claimed it was taxable. They raised a bunch of money. It didn't work. When it didn't work, they merged it into the parent company. That was illegal. They then went around trying to convince Unitate to give them a whole bunch of money. That was illegal. They got the money anyway. They got caught. They set this Clinton Health Access Initiative up. They lied on the IRS form saying there were no predecessor activities. Obviously, there were predecessor activities. And, we've got, I don't know what is going on with the IRS and with the Justice Department. If you and I did something like this, or people we knew, we'd be in the hoosegow already. Mm-hmm. We'd be deciding, we'd be learning how to make license plates.
Or perhaps if Steve Stockton did it, or perhaps if... Stockman, and also, of course...
If Steve Stockton did it, isn't he a basketball player?
Well, I'm sorry.
That's right.
I couldn't remember the name of Corinne Brown. Also would have a problem with doing this.
So then the next question is the Clinton Foundation, in theory, according to the bylaws of New Chai, controlled New Chai. Okay, in theory. All right, but as I say on the right here, there's supposed to be 7 directors. There's no evidence that those directors ever came together. There's no evidence that they actually submitted an application that comes close to being one that might have gotten IRS approval. This is for New Chai. But of course, Lois Lerner was in the right department of the IRS, so she could make sure that she would torture Tea Party people, for minor potential infractions, but let this thing sail right through, even though it's an obvious fraud. I mean, if we're going to have an investigation, if Mark Meadows wants to pound the table and ask our friends, the badass in Mozambique, tough questions, he should be asking the IRS, about the contrast. How come you tortured the Tea Party, but you let this obvious fraud go sailing through in 2009 and 10? And I'll tell you why. Because when this went sailing through between September 29th, 2009 and March 15th, 2010, Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton and the Democrats wanted to make sure that they did not get savaged in the 2010 midterm elections, which they did get savaged. And had they not done this, you could imagine how much worse it would have been in 2010, and maybe that Barack Obama wouldn't have been reelected in 2012. That's probably what happened. That's a good working theory.
What about that guy Hackney, or whatever his name is, who was testifying, after Tom Fitton, but before Doyle and Moynihan?
He was appropriately named, I think.
But he was like working for Lois Lerner or something. What was he doing there?
I don't know. I mean, I think from public reporting, I believe the minority had a right to suggest certain witnesses, and I think he was put forward.
Oh, so the Democrats put him
Yeah.
there. Oh, well, that makes sense.
Yeah, I think so. And so then we look at this thing of the election of directors. Let's look at this for a second. This says that the William J. Clinton Foundation, it doesn't say, it doesn't define the William J. Clinton Foundation as a lawfully organized and operated tax-exempt charity. But I would argue that certainly by September 29th, 2009, the William J. Clinton Foundation was not a lawfully organized and operated charity. So it couldn't have the real legal power to appoint a majority of the members of the board, okay? And these people, it's like we're back to monarchy. We're presaging what happens on the 2nd of November 2013 when the Clinton family takes control by an operation of the bylaws of the parent company for life of the Clinton Foundation. Here, Bill and Mad Ira C. Magaziner, Mad Max, they get put lifetime appointments, which you can't do in a public charity, for life, chair and vice chair. They basically control this thing in between meetings of the board, and they have the right to forever appoint 2 more people, so they control 4 out of 7 seats. And this is silent on, this gives actually these 4 people effectively the right to remove the supposed independent people. And I think there's a drafting error in this. I don't think you can have independent trustees who are independent of the Clinton Foundation and Chai. I don't see how that's possible, right? Because you should, in theory, Ira's the only person. He's not really independent because he's got a consulting firm that's in operation, still in operation, and was then in operation, providing services to governments and possibly to clients and donors of this Chai and of the Clinton Foundation. So he's certainly not independent. Bill's not independent. The other two people that they're stuffing in here for the Clinton Foundation, one of them is Chelsea. Mm-hmm. Those people aren't independent, and most of the people who ultimately were selected are not all that independent. So I don't even see New Chai from the get-go on September 29th, 2009 as having been organized or thereafter operated lawfully, going back to September 29th, 2009. So who are the people who are giving this obvious fraud a lot of money? You know, we're not talking about the people you see sadly sleeping. You know, I saw a guy walking up the street. It's a very nice part of town you live here, but sadly there were two beggars.
There's a homeless shelter right down the street.
Yeah, but this took it to a new low. There was one guy who was sitting there smoking a cigarette, drinking from a bottle of rum while his buddy was passed out. You know, and this is at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Sunday. I mean,
that's a weekend. They're kicking
right
back.
But those, even if a donor hired those two guys, you know, and gave them a pizza pie, they do better due diligence than a lot of smart people, including advisors to Bill Gates and all these foreign governments. I mean, it's just nuts. So with that, the question is, with all this being the case, did anyone give this New Chai any money? Well, let's see. Let's see. What was the state of the paperwork of this New Chai? Okay. The first instance, just like the Clinton Foundation, that never filed what's called a short period return for the first stub year. Clinton Foundation was October 23, 1997 to December 31, 1997. This was September 29, 2009 to December 31st, 2009. They never filed a short period return, which means that their return is, I think, open all the way back to September 29th, 2009. And the question of what was going on in 2009 is highly material. Obviously, they were very active in 2009. We've done shows on this before. The biggest piece of the Clinton Foundation in 2009 was an entity that they called Chai. It was by far and away the biggest piece. It was something like 80% of the action. So they screw up here. This is all relatively, having screwed up here, it doesn't particularly matter that no other thing that they did was ever right. But if we start in 2010, who do they use as their auditor? The notorious BAD.
Yeah.
The audit that's produced for 2010 is ridiculous. I mean, it doesn't it doesn't deal with the true origins of this entity. It lies about those. It doesn't, it omits all kinds of material facts. They make the audit is produced on the 31st of August, 2011. They wait 76 days to file a return with the IRS, and you don't want to see that. The audit needs to check the state of affairs of the entity. For the director's protection, it should check it the date the thing is filed with the IRS, so you can have a third party that had looked at everything. And when you get in the kind of trouble the Clinton Foundation and Chai now should be in, as a director, you can say, well, wait a minute, I mean, we used notorious BAD, and then the IRS will send back the laugh tape, you know, because you should have used those two drunks. But this, you know, this was horrible, a horrible start to 2010. They filed this well after the 2010 election, obviously, but they file this note. This is right when Simpson-Thatcher is making their oral report. Simpson-Thatcher starts October 27, 2011. So they're hot and heavy, Simpson-Thatcher is, in the middle of, in theory, looking through this. They should have said that, wait a minute, you can't do this. Bring that audit forward to November 15, 2011. And by the way, you know, how the hell did you create this thing? Obviously, it was a successor to the previous activities. Where are the related party disclosures? Bill's getting this 5-year contract with Laureate in this period, in April 26th, I think, 2010. How come there are no disclosures of related party contracts? You know, this is all wrong, Simpson-Thatcher should have said, but instead they said, pay us $200,000, you know, we're good.
Stamp it.
And so then the expert on New York nonprofit corporation law, Victoria Bjorklund, the person who co-wrote the authoritative book, allowed, in this time frame she's advising the Clinton Foundation, because we have emails back and forth, they allowed the Clinton Foundation to send a fraudulent report into New York State concerning the largest former piece of the Clinton Foundation, this something called New Chai. All right, so that's their opening move. You know, you see those. You don't see much of this anymore when the Olympics, the high dive. You know, but you see it in the cartoons where the person gets out there.
Into a glass of water.
Well, yeah, exactly. No, they get up and they do all the right moves, and they're going to do up, and then they jump off the thing, and then they go through the concrete on the side of the pool down 100 feet. I mean, that's in essence what happened here. And then they said, well, okay, as far as New York is concerned, we're not going to tell New York that we actually had to amend our 2010 return. They amend the 2010 return on November 21st, 2013. They failed to inform New York, judging what looking at the New York State site. This is here, Jason.
Oh, sorry.
They should have made extensive disclosures because the changes were gigantic. They didn't. They don't explain New York the changes. They don't send the revised 990 to New York. They don't revise the form for New York State. And the current status of all this, it's way overdue. You do have to make these filings.
Wow.
And so that's just for 210.
Wow.
All right. And the similar pattern happens in 2011, 12, 13. They're all wrong. Okay.
So how come? I mean, so for 9 years now, or 10. I mean, 8.5 years, they haven't filed anything.
Well, what they filed is, if I were in the role of being a New York State person looking to collect tax revenue, which I hope some people are trying to do, because we got a big budget deficit problem, I would take the position. My opening position is to the Clinton Foundation is produce all your books and records, and show us, tell us when you are going to actually file your returns, starting from September 29th, 2009, and hint, a good answer is next week. You know, and a bad answer is you don't have any time because you got to get down to the Dominican Republic and screw around with, you know, Chelsea and Hillary for some ridiculous holiday or something like that. This is a shit show. I mean, when you look at the forms in here and you contrast, and I'm not saying, you know, whatever state the Trump Foundation returns are in, if there are problems with that, jump on that. We're talking there about $2.8 million in the Trump Foundation. We're going to show you the magnitude of this shit show. Yeah. I like the sound of that when I think about this. Of course, so does Chelsea. That's her field. But so we're talking here about BKD's got problems for 2 years, and then this new firm up in the branch up in Boston, it's got problems. In New York, they still haven't.
What's MHM?
It's I just forget the acronym. McCann something and something. McCann, Hoffman, and Meyer. I don't have 2017 up on here because they haven't filed it in New York. It was due on November 15th, 2018. There's nothing there.
Wow.
Okay. So
brazen.
This is not even an F. There's got to be a grade below F. F'd up. So if we go to the next page. Okay, this is fun. This is a lot of fun. So in the top rows, I indicate Hillary was Secretary of State in all of 2010, 11, and 12, and for 1 month in 2013. The Clinton Foundation was illegally controlled in theory by the Clinton family beginning November 2nd, 2013, right? So in this entire period that we're examining, where the Clinton Health Access Initiative is the largest piece by far of the Clinton Foundation, there's massive vulnerability to public corruption allegations because she's Secretary of State and the family's profiting from the foundation and not disclosing it. And then beginning the 2nd of November 2013, when Hillary's gearing up to raise money for a presidential campaign, there's an obvious set of motives throughout this whole period to suspect the Clinton family and those around it of using this supposed charity and others as a way to enrich themselves, to finance Chelsea's lifestyle, their own lifestyle, and to fund all these political campaigns. Right? So we look in here, the disclosures on the Form 990, you're required to say, how much money in total did you get from governments? And on the government form, this is now for the 990 form for New Chai, they show a very high percentage. In 2010 and 11, it's 80% of all money coming in for contributions and grants is from governments, drops down to 50, and that's because in 2012 and afterwards, Unitate is on the side. It doesn't flow through the financial statements. So there should be footnote accounting for that, I think, but on the 990, the point is this is an entity that a majority of their revenues is government. Under Arkansas law, and this is an Arkansas nonprofit, you're supposed to highlight how much of your revenue you're supposed to show how much of the revenue is non-governmental, right? So it's a material fact how much is actually to governments. In New York State, they want to know. They want you to list out. It's not enough to say, here's the grab bag, I got 138 million from governments. No. New York, they want each government, each grant, each purpose, a contact phone number, same in California, so that people who were interested in actually enforcing the laws, evidently there are none when it comes to the Clintons, could go and call up the government saying, did you really send only XYZ to the Clinton Foundation? Because we see this press release over here where you bragged about sending 110 million euros to the Clinton Foundation government of Ireland in 2003, yet in the Clinton Foundation form, there's not even anywhere near close to 110 million euros of revenue. You can like...
Little joke.
Yeah, a little joke. So on the CHAR 500 form, that's the New York form, we have the governments in total is the 138 million, but in the CHAR form they say, actually, we only got $242,000 worth of governmental revenue. Okay, it's the same people filling out the form.
It's a little bit of a discrepancy.
Yeah, a small one. Yeah, it's a $138 million discrepancy.
I can see how you'd miss that.
Yeah, it's a chump change, right? And so then Unitaid here, we have from the, in quotes, audits by BKD, we know that they're claiming they got 110 million, and that's really an amalgam of governments with the Gates Foundation putting some money in, but I would count Unitaid as a government, meaning that there's an unexplained $27 million gap here where they're telling you, we aren't going to tell you anything about our government, right? We're just not going to do it because we're the Clinton Foundation. We don't have to do it, right? The next year there's a $21 million, then a $44, then a $53, then an $84 million
wow
thing. So this is all the way through 2014. That's a lot of money not explained. They claim that they get it from only two government entities, from the CDC, which is the Center for Disease Control, and from USAID, tied to the State Department.
Center for Disease Cover-Ups?
Possibly, yeah. And then in 2015 and 16, when they deign to tell you, explain the 90 and the 65.5, you're supposed to put the whole detail, each grant, the purpose. There are many examples, both in New York and California, of compliant forms of the detail that's expected. The Clinton Foundation was just named as one of the biggest foundations in America by Forbes. They obviously, as you'll soon see, are happy to spend money on overhead. They spent an absurd amount of money on overhead. They had, in the heyday, access to cash and resources to fill the forms out properly. And you have Bill as a rogue scholar, Ira as a rogue scholar, Hillary is one of the smartest lawyers in the world, thinking she's going to run the world. And this is the kind of garbage they put out in where? In New York. And what is New York? She was, I guess, the junior senator in New York. She was representing New York State, and she feels so strongly about upholding, serving the people of New York, that she wants to make a mockery of New York's charity and campaign solicitation laws. I mean, this is, to me, I look at this, and I think somebody like this should not only be put in prison, but should never, ever be able, we can't go back to the days where the sins of the parents are visited on the next generation, and we shouldn't go back to those days, but this is just so far away from being right. And this is one of the states where they live. They have 2 mansions in Chappaqua. They operate another charity from Chappaqua illegally, without disclosing all these flaws. And we're going to go after Donald Trump over $2.8 million. So let's go to the next page. Now, we think about the practice that these people, they finally decided in 2015, when it came to Chai, that they would tell you by range how much money Chai had gotten.
Range?
Right. The highest range they selected was the top donor, you've given 25 million or more, down here. Right? So these are some of the big donors. Unitaid was described as having given 25 million or more. Global Affairs Canada, 25 million. Norway, and
too vague?
It's way too vague. It's not compliant with the New York form. What does the truth turn out to be? The truth is that Unitaid gave $604 million, not $25 million or more. So that's like saying, you know,
It's not inaccurate, but it's vague.
no, that's
It's imprecise.
the standard is not accuracy; it's misleading. It's highly misleading to fail to disclose that you've taken so much money from this one suspect donor, that this donor, Unitaid, the French government, the largest donor to Unitaid, was so concerned that they launched an investigation into Unitaid to figure out what the hell they were doing, generally, but more specifically with the Clinton Foundation. If you're going to describe Unitaid as a 25 million plus donor when it's actually 604 million, how the hell much did Canada actually give? How much did Norway give? How much did UK give? Australia, I think Australia should have been in here as 25 million or more, and it's not. But we know Australia gave close to 100 million.
This is Forbes who calculated this?
No, this is from the Australian government disclosures. So we have information from Norway that shows it's a lot more than 25 million. We have information from Australia that it's more than 20. Australia's not even on this list. But the point is, if you add up all of the known government grants prior to 2010 of the Clinton Foundation, I'm sorry, for 2006, prior to 2010 for the Clinton Foundation, and then from 2010 to 2016 for CHAI, you add up all of the disclosed government grants, you come up with 827 million, meaning that the difference can only be 223 million. And we know that among these three and then the others, we already know it's over 223 million. So there's an obvious uncured problem here. And why would we care about this? Because, you know, here you are, the government of Canada is not exactly flush with cash, or Norway, or the UK right now. Everyone's under pressure. These are all energy-producing countries, low oil prices, they have high social costs for the people, debts, budget deficits. England's thinking about going to go through this Brexit. None of these countries, including the United States, is in a position where we can just burn money. And
France apparently is.
France,
burning everything.
They like to burn cars.
Someone in the chat was saying that Macron is like holed up in some castle and people are storming the castle.
Yeah.
We're not hearing anything about what's going on in France.
Right. Exactly. Well,
that's quite crazy. That's such a big deal, and the news says nothing. The news also says nothing about this dark overlord and everything with 9/11, and they say nothing about the Lawyers Commission for 9/11 inquiry.
Yeah, that's. So there's an obvious mathematical problem here. Now let's think about, are these people at CHAI, are they responsible stewards of all this money? Let's
Stewie.
look. Yes, Stewie.
Yeah, Brian,
exactly.
come here.
Let's come here, slide 9. All right, so what I did here is there's some disclosure in these audits done by BKD and MHM by category. And the most important line to look at is here, the bottom one, as usual. The direct expenditures that they claim, that's the expenditures which would go directly for the intended purposes in theory of this CHAI, which is not really a charity anyway, 16 million, right? Overhead, 44.4 million.
Whoa.
And Unitaid, 110.6, which as we show on the preceding slide is not actually what Unitaid gave them, they gave more than that. So that's a hell, why are you spending $25 million on salaries and 16 million on direct expenses? I look at this and I say the Unitaid line most likely is an allocation. It is not, you would like to think that that's all for purchasing drugs. Unitaid's charter is that 85%.
I think Bill thinks that too.
Is 85% of the monies that, all the money that Unitaid gives is supposed to be incremental. It's not to pay for overhead. It's supposed to be, the charity is supposed to be established, and this incremental money is supposed to go directly to help the poorest of the poor countries. And it's supposed to go to implementing organizations that are lawfully organized and operated. Of course, this is not. Now, is this just a small piece of Unitaid? No. In 2010, it's close to a majority of Unitaid's grants. A significant percentage of Unitaid's grants go to this Clinton Foundation HIV.
Who runs Unitaid?
The guy who used to be the former French Minister of Foreign Minister of France ran it in 2010. And
What's his name?
Philippe Douste-Blazy.
Oh, right. Monsieur Douste-Blazy. I love how Fabien tells us that.
Douste-Blazy. Who is actually, it should be Douste Blasé, because he obviously didn't care about anything.
Any relation to Blasey Ford?
No, I don't think so. Probably distant. But so we look through. Let's think about this. You've got direct expenses, 16.4 million. Remember, this thing is based in Boston. Clinton Foundation has no authority to operate anything in Boston.
That house that Trish and I went to?
Yeah. And they're spending $7 million on travel in 2010. They're spending $3.3 million on meetings. Now, that must have been a meeting to hand out Krugerrands or something like. I mean, how do you spend $7 million flying around? How do you have only only 16 million of direct expenses, 20 and all this overhead? I look at this, and remember, you mentioned our Magaziner was running a consulting business at the same time.
Out of that same house?
Out of that same place, or near that same.
That doesn't seem like something you should be able to do.
Absolutely not. And when you run these types of businesses, these numbers, in my mind, are inventions. They're allocations. They sit and say, okay, how much should we say we earned? Okay, then we'll do a spreadsheet. What percent should we say we spend on? And then we'll put. You take Jason Scott, or I've got however many hours I'll work. Typical professional will work 2,000 hours a year, give or take. So you then say, all right, on a given day, I'll spend 3 hours on consulting work. I'll spend most of my time on monkey business and a bit of time on foundation work, and we'll just allocate my time. And that's how you come up with it. When I travel as Ira Magaziner or Bill Clinton, and I've got the Energizer Bunny over here.
I was going to say, you need one column for strip clubs, one column for IMAX movies.
Right. So as a guess, one of the reasons that they selected BAD, and they had the people, I believe, in Little Rock, do the work for something based here in Boston, as a guess, is they didn't want anybody who would check too carefully how these numbers are actually, what are the source documents, because as a guess, these are just, sophisticated wild-ass guesses, which in accounting are called swags. Seriously. So you look at the amount of money we're talking, I didn't add it up here, but we're talking about, let's say, 170, 330, 400, 500, 630, 770. We're talking about $900 million of money flowing out of this pig.
Well, we did more good than bad.
Exactly. Right. And I mean, and notice how the salaries keep climbing, and meetings in 2014. Now, what was going on in 2014, 15, and 16? Hillary Clinton was trying to plan her presidential campaign. Suddenly you go from 3 million in meetings to 13 million, 16 million in meetings. That's over $1 million a month on meetings.
You could hide a ton of stuff in this. Hotel rooms, travel, if you need a computer for a meeting, if you need a suit or whatever. You could put a lot of stuff in that.
And then you have, look at consulting. 3 million, 2 million, 2 million,
on top
7
of the
million,
huge salaries.
7.8, 10 million.
Wow.
I mean, why are you spending $25 million on direct costs and 10 million on consultants? And $13 million on meetings. I mean, it's just obvious to me that this is out of control. Bear in mind, through this entire period, the Clinton Foundation, especially 13, 14, 15, and 16, the Clinton Foundation held, if their adjustments to the various bylaws were enforceable, they felt, or they were fixing to exercise, that the Clinton family would exercise ironclad control of the parent Clinton Foundation, and by extension of this thing. And you look at this mess, this amount of money spent, no accounting for what happened to Unitate money that was coming in 2012, 13, 14, smaller money, but nonetheless coming in as an agent. Who was making the decision to hire these consulting firms, to have these meetings, to pay for, what kind of travel bill? How do you spend $1 million a month on travel? And if you really cared about changing the lives of the recipients, why didn't you run this thing, have a regional office in Africa and a regional office in Asia, hire local people so you didn't have to fly across?
Right.
And you didn't have to do this thing from one of the most expensive cities in the world. Oh yes, you did, because our Magaziner's consulting business was based in Boston. This is just so far away from being the standard that stewards of scarce assets and resources should be using in running a charity. This is a textbook case in how not to run a charity. And we're sitting here patiently, we're getting impatient, but we have been sitting here patiently wondering what on God's green earth is the IRS doing about this. The rumors of planes flying here and there. Get some planes over to Boston raid the Boston offices, raid Ira Magaziner's house, not Paul Manafort's house, his various houses.
That's a good point.
You know, what is going on here, studying the source material, the bank accounts around the world of anything connected to this, all the money transfers, all the people. There are lots of people on LinkedIn have already made a mistake. Note, you can't fix it because I've already taken the stuff off. You've already bragged about all the things that you've done, you know, that are most of which are illegal on your resumes around the world.
Illegally.linkedin.com.
Exactly. And so, I mean, if you had, I mean, as I mentioned before, I had a pleasant interchange with 2 FBI agents, and I can imagine what people who are exercised within the FBI could get out of somebody if they raided, you know, let's say this morning or tonight, they raided 383 Dorchester Avenue, what they would find, or our magazine's home or other places. There's got to be warehouses filled of information and correspondence that would allow, you know, you wouldn't even need 40 agents. You might take 10 to descend on the place and then take a few weeks the way they did with Scientology and reconstruct the books of this.
I thought Scientology broke into the FBI.
Well, they later did, but there were different portions of Scientology. I'm talking about Scientology of California. And also bear in mind that in this entire period, this thing was operating in multiple currencies. So when you see dollar financials,
rates and everything.
yeah, I mean, you should have financial statements for every operation, you know, the Mozambique statements and the Nigeria statements and the India statements and the transfers among and between, and what exchange rates did you use, where's all the supporting information for all that? And, you know, instead we have this. We have this, you look at this. It is absolutely a charade. And then you look at other. Notice how other, I don't like to see, I mean, these are the big categories for something like this, the salaries, the travel, et cetera. Why does other go from 1.4 million up to 8 million and then down to 4? I mean, 8 million of other is one hell of a lot of other.
Well, it just sounds like lazy record keeping, and we don't know what else to think of. Just put it in other.
I mean, we can't put strippers in meetings. I mean, we got to put it in other.
I guess it depends.
Yeah. So that's, you know, the headline for today. I know we're getting set up for a very busy week. We want to keep this one a little bit shorter than the normal one. But that's what I have to say about this new chai. I think it is preposterous that this new Attorney General has been giving interviews apparently recently saying that she's going to move to a style now where instead of investigating crime, she's going to investigate people. So they're going to go after Donald Trump.
Who said that? Oh, the New York
Attorney General.
How the hell can you even do that?
Because it's de Blasio stand and Cuomo stand. You know, they'll do it.
Wait.
I think we've reached a point where Donald Trump's FBI and Justice Department need to forget this. It's not a sanctuary state anymore. It's an insane state. You cannot have elected officials say, you know what, that Constitution, forget it. That's old white men stuff. You know, I'm going to do the hip thing, what I want to do. You know, I'm just going to investigate my political enemies using the unlimited resources of New York State. I mean, we just put, the Justice Department just put the Attorney General of Pennsylvania, she's reporting to prison for similar activities.
Really?
Yeah, not exactly.
Attorney General?
The former, yeah, this was a Clinton crony.
Nice.
Clinton disciple. So if you can do that in Pennsylvania, you know, I think it's entirely time, particularly in charity land, where the primary regulatory responsibility falls to the state attorney general. If they're not going to do the job, and worse, if they're going to pervert the administration of justice to say, you know, we can't get Trump via impeachment, let's get him this way.
That's right.
Then I think the people running the administration have an obligation. Much has happened actually going back to a long time ago in enforcing the Civil Rights Act. You know, the federal government had to go in and enforce the Civil Rights Act in Arkansas, of all places. And I think it's time for this administration to say, you know what, the people of New York, Trump included and his family are being persecuted by rogue, corrupt politicians in Cuomo and this Attorney General and others, and you got to step up. You want to drain the swamp, you got to take out that big bat and use the bat, Vinny. You got to none of this.
Well, it's time to take a plunger to the swamp.
Exactly.
Pretty clogged.
Call up Mr. Xi, you know, Premier Xi, who just dropped the mother of all bombs, and say, you know, make me one of them bombs from my swamp.
Oh yeah, China dropped a Moab and launched a little probe to the dark side of the moon.
That's right.
I hope it's got some lights on it. I guess they would have thought of that.
I think we have some this just
Oh
ins,
yes,
too.
of course. I cannot forget this just in. Well, Charles, I mean, this was quite a comprehensive presentation, as always. You know, I was just thinking as you brought up that story about, you know, the state attorney general going to jail. There's certain guests I talk to, and then I feel like, oh, you know, we're lost, we're ruined. And then you always come in here with a very positive outlook and make me feel like, you know, stuff may actually happen. People in the chat were talking about QAnon. We don't need that. We got Charles, and he's not even anon. Now, this is...
this is a piece that came out on the 2nd. I don't think we covered this in our last show. This is
it's like this is the most obvious, like new documents come out that suggest that water is wet.
No, but this is well researched and thorough. And I think we need to stop pussyfooting around. I mean, the Trump administration must understand by now that long before June of 2015, when Donald Trump went down the escalator, long before that, the Obama administration decided that it was, or elements of the Obama administration decided that they were going to harness the very powerful federal tools that are out there to go after opponents and perceived opponents of the regime. And for some reason they decided, ill-advisedly in my view, that they would support Hillary Clinton's candidacy by rigging the primaries in the Democratic Party to make her win. And they thought that they could then just install Hillary in as president, and that she would have enough dirt, they would have enough dirt on her that they'd be able to control her and ensure that this rogue operation, this rogue regime, would never be punished for its misdeeds. And you know, the politicians, Paul Ryan doesn't want to do anything about it. He's all set to go be a lobbyist. We, citizen journalists, and you, the public, we're the ones who've got to do something. And I wish this, I mean, this is almost...
Too good to be true?
Yeah, I wish this weren't in the onion, the burnt onion.
Yeah, well, I mean, this would be a good way for her to raise money, like kind of like that, give me $1 and I'll go away.
That's right. That's called Danegeld. That's the old. That goes way back, probably before that. You know, in the 9th century A.D., the Danes came. What we call the Danes, they would come down to the coast of England and they'd say, you know, give me your prettiest girls and, you know, all your gold, and I won't kill you all.
Fair deal.
And I'll go away. And nobody ever checked the paperwork about when they would return. They come back, you know.
Do that again,
yeah.
Right. Oh.
They did it last time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, Charles, it's been another fantastic presentation. Was there anything else we wanted to look at?
I think that's a good high note to close it on. You know,
there's a little overscan thing happening that I'm noticing, but that's fine. You know, Charles, it's we really are trying to encourage people to keep an open mind about what's going on with Patreon. There's been no public statements about this from Jack Conte. There were some quotes attributed to him in the New York Times, but he was very conspicuously not pictured there. They had this Jacqueline Hart, I think her name is, Joanne Hart, something like that, who's the head of trust and safety, appearing in multiple photos, but no pictures of Jack Conte. It causes me to wonder if perhaps some of the investors, or, you know, we've heard, of course, that the international payment processors have been putting pressure on Patreon. So I hope that people will not cancel their Patreon accounts. That really is going to hurt the individual Patreon creators more than it'll hurt Patreon. And frankly, Patreon may not even deserve to be hurt. I wonder how many people are not using their Visa cards or their MasterCards because they're unhappy with what those guys have done, or how many people have canceled their Netflix subscription. You know, you're going to Netflix and chill with Saudi Arabia telling you what you can and cannot watch. That is scary. And the prospect that a bank can decide who gets to have money and who gets to not have money, or I guess Visa and MasterCard aren't a bank, but you know what I mean. Yeah. I hope that people will stay with us on patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. Crowdsource the Truth is a community-sponsored news resource, and without your sponsorship, it can't continue. So people can also go to paypal.me/crowdsourcethetruth, put in a one-time sponsorship payment, and if you become a $10 sponsor or more, you're going to get the Sunday with Charles screensaver. It's a wonderful gift, and it's great to have it on your computer. You come back from lunch, and it'll be there with all the funny images. It's actually volume 1. It's only got 50 of the now 134 different. There's actually a little more than 134 because there's a few little interstitial images that we've made, extra ones of Robert Mueller and stuff like that. So we're still in talks. Charles and I are talking about this coffee table book, so that may arrive someday. But for people who don't feel comfortable sponsoring the show, you can also like these videos, you could share these videos, encourage friends of yours who you think would be interested, or perhaps who are still having their heads in the sand, refusing to listen to facts. Anybody who might watch, I don't know, Rachel Maddow, Jake Tapper, Anderson Cooper, any of that crap, but tell them they should be watching Sunday with Charles. And I will be back tomorrow. We've got the first 2019 episode of Light on Conspiracies with Ole Damagard. That's a show that people are going to be able to see exclusively only on Patreon. And I hope people will tune in for that. Ole is always fantastic. Charles, thank you for another excellent presentation.
My pleasure.
Have a great Sunday night, everybody, and I will see you tomorrow.